Well, I think it's really a mindset. You have to decide, we're going to try to do things differently, well, provided that they're better. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be different and better. But I think you just have to sort of decide, let's think beyond the normal stuff and have an environment where that sort of thinking is encouraged and rewarded, and where it's okay to fail as well. Because when you try new things, you try this idea, that idea, a large number of them are not going to work. And that has to be okay. If every time somebody comes up with an idea that has to be successful, you're not going to get people coming up with ideas. Well, it's like the Nike slogan, just do it. Just showing up is half the battle. You got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. You also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't. It's easy to get high in your own supply, as Scarface said. You've got to not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. Yeah, and I think also just don't be afraid of new arenas. You can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands, and just make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. Well, you have to look at what's the definition of an ordinary person. I probably wasn't that ordinary, but my lack of ordinariness did not manifest itself until later in life, or wasn't all that obvious. But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. They can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. So yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary.
Well, I think of these things as just there's a certain amount of time, and within that time you want the best net outcome. So for all the set of actions that you can do, there's going to be some which will fail, some which will succeed, and you want the net useful output of your set of actions to be the highest. Use a baseball analogy. Baseball, they don't let you just sit there and wait for the perfect pitch until you get a real easy one. They're going to give you 3 shots. And the third one, they say, okay, you get off go back to put somebody else up there. So your 3 strikes on the baseball, not on bat anymore. So what you're really looking for is what's the batting average? How you doing on score, and just there's going to be some amount of failure, but you want your net output, net useful output to be maximized. Failure is essentially irrelevant unless it is catastrophic.
I think I'm kind of constitutionally just geared to just keep going. I don't know. Certainly there are times when things don't go well, and then that's quite dispiriting for sure. And so then it's difficult to proceed with the same level of enthusiasm. But I do think the things that we're doing are pretty important to the future. And if we don't succeed, then it's not clear what other things would succeed. And if we don't succeed, then we'll be certainly pointed to as a reason why people shouldn't even try for these things. So I think it's important that we do whatever is necessary to keep going. I think generally people are their thinking process is too bound by convention or analogy to prior experiences. So it's rare that people try to think of something on a first principles basis. They'll say, we'll do that because it's always been done that way. Or they'll not do it because, well, nobody's ever done that, so it must not be good. But that's just a ridiculous way to think. You have to build up the reasoning from the ground up, from first principles, as is the phrase that's used in physics. So you look at the fundamentals, and construct your reasoning from that, and then see if you have a conclusion that works or doesn't work, and it may or may not be different from what people have done in the past. It's harder to think that way, though. I mean, I would always think about something and whether that thing was really true or not, and could something else be true, or is there a better conclusion that one could draw that's more probable? I don't know. I was doing that when I was in elementary school, and I would just question things. Maybe it's sort of built in to question things. No, I'm a volunteer. I mean, I don't need the money. There's nothing. It's not like I'm sitting here saying I wish I could buy such and such a thing. I could buy it. I get paid minimum wage. Actually, I don't even get overtime. I think it's always important to remember that when you're creating a company, there are very dark times, and it's about getting through those dark times. That's the difference between success and failure. Yeah, so when you create a company, I mean, if you think, well, what is a company really? A company is a group of people gathered together to create a product or service, and that's really all a company is. And so you have to really believe in what you're creating, and that it's and know in your heart and mind that this is something that matters, that and that the world ought to have. And I think it's important to investors to show that you're all in. And I think, for example, with Tesla, the fact that I invested all the money I had, literally I had to borrow money from friends to pay the rent in 2008. The fact that I was all in, I think, made a huge difference to investors, to convince them to invest in Tesla. I think that's really important. When you hire people, that just means you're convincing people to join you in the endeavor. You should hire people that are also passionate about what you're doing. So it's not just that they're not just there for salary. That they really need to care about what they're doing, and then they will stay during the dark times. You guys are the magicians of the 21st century. You know, don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic. After my third trip, I said, okay, well, what we really need to do here is try to solve the space transport problem, and started SpaceX. This was against the advice of pretty much everyone I talked to. One friend made me sit down and watch a bunch of videos of rockets blowing up. Let me tell you, he wasn't far wrong. It was tough going there in the beginning because I'd never built anything physical. I mean, I'd built like little model rockets as a kid and that kind of thing, but I'd never had a company that built anything physical. So I had to kind of figure out how to do all these things and bring together the right team of people, and so we did all that and then failed 3 times. It was tough going. Because the thing about a rocket is that the passing grade is 100%, and you don't get to actually test the rocket in the real environment that it's going to be in. So I think the best analogy for rocket engineering is like if you want to create a really complicated bit of software, you can't run the software as an integrated whole, and you can't run it on the computer it's intended to run on. But the first time you put it all together and run it on that computer, it must run with no bugs. That's basically the essence of it. So we missed the mark there. The first launch, I was picking up bits of rocket near the launch site. It was a bit sad. But we learned with each successive flight, and were able to, eventually with the 4th flight in 2008, reach orbit. And that was also with the last bit of money that we had. So thank goodness that happened. I think the saying is 4th time's the charm. Well, I think you learn a lot depending upon whose life you're reading about. There are lots of lessons in there. I read Isaacson's biography of Jobs, which I thought was quite interesting, and I actually really liked his biography of Benjamin Franklin, who I would say is certainly one of my heroes. He seemed like a really great guy.